It has taken a long time to load, so that everyone can see us and hear us, but that's all good. So keep smiling, keep it on there. I just want to make sure when we physically go, because this could be recorded and uploaded. I know, right? So all cute smile. I can't even see myself because I'm just making sure it goes until it fully populates because it's really slow. There we are. We're going. So got it. All right, kick it off. Welcome, everyone. Erica, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. I know if you're on the West Coast, there's a lot going on, so hopefully this is worth your time. Today we have myself, Erica, Desiree, Marty, and Kelly, and today's topic is Pass the Torch. So most of us know what...
Acknowledge Trailblazers. We're not number one.
Oh, great. Okay. There goes my notes.
Welcome,
College Trailblazers. Okay, let me shift. So I would say that everybody on this call in their own way is a trailblazer. So when I think of blazing a trail, literally, you know, it is something that is hard, impassable. You're looking through it. And naturally, I'm kind of looking left and right saying, what's the easier path to take? And sometimes there isn't, you know, and what is beyond that brush, that area that you can't get through? And is it worth pushing through the thorny spaces and getting scratches and blood and, you know, all of that good stuff? What's on the other side of that? And is it worth plowing through to get to that, you know, that pain? And then within that, you find sort of a passion and a drive and a grit to get through that, you know, ensuring that you're trying to reach some type of goal or get somewhere. So is trailblazing easy? Absolutely not. In a context of professionalism, if you're a trailblazer, it's very difficult because the one thing that an organization and people do not like is change. And change is really the hardest thing to change in a culture. And we all know that a culture, you know, trumps mission and vision every day of the week. What is the culture like in an organization? So, you know, we've all got stories of how we may be the first tier and what we had to go through, and then what it looked like on the other end, and then what happened when we got to the other end. So with that context, Marty, if you can give me some examples of you know, time in your life, because we're all only 25, but we've got the experience of 50, 60.
Right.
Adults, right?
Right. That's right.
Exactly. So, you
Well,
know,
I'm going to shorten a very long story, but when my kids were going off to college, I feel like there's these moments in your life that are kind of planet shift moments where everything changes and you realize that the, you know, reason that you're on the planet isn't going to be as useful as much anymore because the kids don't want to hear from you anymore. And so, and I was sitting in church and the pastor said, you know, you all have gifts. Are you using them? And I scratched my head and said, I don't know. I couldn't really answer that question well. So I actually decided that I was going to go on a quest to figure it out. And honestly, calling it a quest was just a way to not sound so lame that I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I started taking people to coffee that knew me, and I started paying attention to people who were doing things that I admired. And just, you know, through those coffee meetings that turned into other coffee meetings, I landed on one gentleman who said, well, you should go to this webinar that I'm having, or seminar that I'm having. And because I think the topic is something that would put you on the right track. And so I'll never forget, and this kind of speaks to your pushing through part, where I'm in the parking lot that morning and and I'm thinking, okay, I don't want to go in there. He's not going to remember he invited me. I don't even know what I'm walking into. And I just remember having to talk through it in my head saying, put on your big girl panties and get your rear end in there. And so I went in, and it was the catalyst for where I am today. So it was a gentleman who was talking about generational wealth and legacy, and how most families will lose their wealth and their connections in the family within 3 generations. And so my passion point that I had kind of navigated to is I wanted to be in philanthropy somehow, but I couldn't quite connect the dots. And But what I could see him saying was, unless you invest in family, then, you have to prepare the heirs for the wealth or it's going to end badly. And I could see philanthropy as that tool to use to be able to make that happen. So that one moment of kind of saying, let me be brave and go see what this is like. It was a slog. So, I needed to go get training, and I did. And then I got out of training and it wasn't happening fast enough. And so all of these pivots, but, I think it's when my learning was, and the one thing I would say is, I think there's a lot of people that start out and have that energy and it feels like you're on the right path and you're being affirmed and you're saying, okay, it's working. Yep, I need to keep going. And then you get to this one point, and it hit me one day where I was just tired and it wasn't happening fast enough. And this one buddy of mine, he was a coach, and he called me out of the blue. And the minute I heard his voice, I started laughing. And he goes, why are you laughing? And I said, well, I was going to quit today. So I'm sure that's why you're calling me, because the universe needed to send you to me. And he engaged me to say, look, it's the number of hours that you put into something that makes you an expert or creates your success. It's not how many hours have you put in. And I said, well, it feels like a lot. And he goes, you're not there yet. You haven't done enough hours. And that, to me, for my logic, okay, I just got to keep going. And I always wonder how many people get to that point where they're so close, because it wasn't that long to where it really started clicking and I got to end up doing exactly what I love doing. But in that journey, it's like slogging through it and pushing through. I loved your description of that I think so often people hit that wall and it feels impossible, but they don't realize that, a week, a month later, they're going to be where they want to be, or the thing's going to open up to start making it happen. But, you don't have a crystal ball, but, and that's where being in community with people in those, planet shifting moments where they affirm, no, keep going, you're on the right track, and they point out all the reasons you stay in the game.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was just thinking of this visually. So most people don't get to that end goal, but they blazed a trail to a certain point, and then they turn around and they go back. But then there's going to be, those people behind them that can kind of go down that path and hopefully continue to go further, and they may make it or they may turn around. And I always think it's so important for us to remember the people before us, because even though we may have been a first at whatever, it's 2023 and we still have a lot of women still becoming firsts at things, which is shocking. There were women before us at the beginning of this country, in the 1775 era, all the way to today. And I've recognized it's important to know who those women were who fought whatever fight that was, and blazed that trail or made it to a certain point to where it's a little easier for us. So thank you for that description.
Well, and one other thing that triggered when you said that is that there was a day where I thought I had figured it out. I had connected and set up this meeting with this woman who was doing exactly what I wanted to do. And she was in her late 70s. And I'll never forget sitting at lunch with her, and she, had a St. John knit suit on and perfectly manicured nail. I mean, she was just rocking it, right? And but she was very clear that she didn't want me doing it with her. That was her space, that was her sandbox, didn't want any help, didn't want, and I remember feeling discouraged, but I got in my car and I thought, you know what? I'm on the right track, because a woman in her late 70s is so protective of what she's doing, then she still wants to do it, that I'm on the right path, because that's what I want. I want to be doing something that I'm passionate about well into my later years. And she had, she's one of the ones that went before me. And so it's kind of, and it was much harder for her, but here she was still in the game, still fighting the good fight. So
interesting point. So Kelly, you had a whole career, UPS and beyond, mostly the only woman in the room, I'm sure many times. I think that there is an interesting dynamic of the old adage that women don't bring up other women, and that they are territorial. And, I've seen that, but I've seen the opposite. And we're of the generation where we try to break that stereotype and bring those women up behind us. What's your experience?
Well, first of all, Marty made so many great points and so many things you can jump off on. And I think one thing about our principles in general, they connect, right? So Trailblazers and acknowledging Trailblazers has a big connection to mentoring, as we were talking about earlier. So, I can think of, I was the only woman in the room almost all the time. Okay, almost all the time growing up through UPS. And for a variety of reasons, mostly because, transportation still today, a very male dominated industry. But luckily, we had great leadership at UPS that saw that and worked extremely hard to change it. And so I had, as I was blazing the trail, I also had a lot of support to bring others along, right? And so at UPS, we worked extremely hard at finding the talented people and the people, like you say, Marty, who want to put in the work, because it's work. Sometimes I feel like people think it's just going to come to them, No, it's work. And that's why you never know. The one word you say, make it a positive word, make it an encouraging word, because it might be the word that keeps someone blazing their trail and keeps someone going. Many times, I had so many great male mentors that would encourage me and just try to pull me up as well, because it's difficult when you're on that trail all alone. So I looked for trailblazers from all over, from outside industries, from all around us. And as you said, Erica, I'm a history nut. I'm a history nerd, kind of. I love history. I would go back in history and look at women. I mean, you can find a million examples, like you said, all the way back. Think of women just running the households while the men were out trying to find food somewhere, right? But I mean, they're doing all the work. So I often think to myself, women have been working forever, and we have been maintaining and sustaining the children, the workplace. I'd look at UPS and I'd always laugh because people are like, oh, there's all these men who run the company. Oh no, you want to know who's running the company? It's the females in the office that are doing all the work. I said they run the company. But anyway, so you can look at a Rosa Parks, you can look at a Condoleezza Rice, you can look at the people who started the equal rights for women back, way back, and everything they've done. I just get amazed. So again, I think that maintaining your and what did you call it, Marty? Just maintaining your drive and not quitting. Don't quit, because you're right, Marty. Something's right around the corner. There's always something right around the corner. And there's a way for you to continue on your trail, therefore also blazing it and bringing others along with you. So, I think it can get discouraging. It can get discouraging really fast when you look around and there's no one there. That's why I love firsts, and I love more women doing firsts, and more minority people doing first, because it's another role model. It's another role model for the next generation, and I just think that's exciting. So one of my proudest moments was I really produced some of the top leaders who are at UPS today, and who are doing things at UPS that I only thought about doing. They're making it happen in so many better ways. So I'm very proud to have touched that generation and helped them at the same time that I hope my trail blazed a bit of a path for them to get through as well.
Do you have an example of like a lean in moment where maybe, you could have gone left, but you leaned in and it really made all the difference?
Well, I have multiple examples. I had an extremely large account I was working to bring into UPS. And no one had ever brought in an account of that size in our market. And so we were told no by that account multiple times. And, repeatedly, when you're hitting somebody and they're saying no, and I think just most people would quit. So here's the funny story, right? So I went to, I think it was the Consumer Electronics Show that one of our colleagues has been at, Chitra. I mean, it's a fantastic show. It's up in Vegas, and UPS would always attend, etc. So this account, I was pretty, discouraged. I went up to the Consumer Electronics Show. I had to be at the booth. I had to make a presence and be there. So I did that, and I was coming home on a flight from Las Vegas, and the person in the seat next to me was the guy that was in control of that account, who had been saying no to me over and over. I sat down and I looked at him and I said, wow, I've got an hour and a half now, or an hour of uninterrupted time with you. And he just went, oh no, no, Kelly. And by the time, yeah, exactly. By the time we left that airplane, I had made the deal. So so what a fluke. It was a fluke, right?
I don't think it's a fluke.
Well, I know, I don't either. I don't either. I would say it's a divine thing, but other people would say it's luck or fluke, whatever you want to say.
But the other thing too is you created the relationship,
right,
to know who he was, to recognize him, to know, like you would put the time in, you were prepared for that moment.
Oh, absolutely. And I hit him hard, Marty, with everything I had.
Close it, baby.
It was great. Yeah, it was really great. And I tell that story all the time because I want people to understand, don't quit. You never know when it's going to turn around. When the customer has always said no, but something happens and they decide to say yes. Or, you're going down a path to become a vice president and, you have to relocate, say yes. Just say yes, try something new, do something different. And things happen.
That's a great story.
Right? That's well, so I have two things. One I want to respond to Marty, and one I want to respond before Erica asked me to Kelly. So Marty, you made a comment about the fact that, you wanted to happen faster. I mean, I could say that about the NDILC. Rebecca Steele, who's not on the call right now, she's the one that encouraged me. She said, oh yeah, we'll do it together. I said, you would do that? So we started it, went out blazing. And then it became, okay, so where are we going? What are we doing? And then in 2019, we had this incredible event, and everyone had the emotional, impact that it had in so many people's lives and a physical health life. And then all of a sudden, when 2020 hit, it was only 6 months after our event, 2020 hit, and to where March we shut down. And all the blue, Marty, you posted that on LinkedIn. And I connected with you on a fear of me not reaching out to you and following up like I should. And then you took me on and said, okay, you have to, and gave me some tough love to get some structure to it. And Clubhouse, in the meantime, was working on the other end. So I practiced on my presentation. I practiced on my ability to feel natural on myself and hone in my skill in better presenting. And all of a sudden, when you came at me and we were working together and how you're going to make sure that you're very intentional and you're not running around the circles with your head, chopped off, that you're really putting it together, the world, the world was coming together, because then Erica and Chitra and everyone was like, okay, so where are we going? What are we doing? It all worked out that we had that purpose and we came together, the strength. So to your point, here I felt 10 years in the making of the group. And yet the council had been, it had been 5, why, where, and how. And you were able to put me onto a path, everyone connecting, because then I connected you to Deanna, and then we went on the call with, Wendy and everyone, then we became part of the Clubhouse thing. So this all worked together to the point that you were talking about, Kelly. But I just want to let you know, Marty, that it spoke to me on how you're so intentional. And that's why I love everyone on the council. It's so very different, yet we still have our life journeys are intense and passion. So I just want to give that credit due. But to your point, Kelly, so thank you very much, Marty. So on the airplane, so we all know that I worked in the foreclosure market, which is where, properties go back to the bank, but they don't always have to go back to the bank. The transitional housing has to be, better and more elegant as we go through. And Rebecca Steele was the one who said, no, you either do a loan mod or you gracefully can get a loan reduction is what a loan mod is, or you can gracefully get a short sell and sell a home. So that whole thing in 2008 and 9 is because of her to get this thing done and approved. So thankful for her. So, but the point was, when the properties would go back to the bank, they have to go through a process to whether they would allow them to keep them, how they're going to get sold and everything else. So Fannie Mae was the biggest insurer of all the loans across the $7 trillion we have in the United States, right? So I've been working for Fannie Mae for decades. And I wanted to make sure, because I really was not happy about certain things. I sit on all these councils and boards with all the GSEs, which are the Fannie and Freddie. And so lo and behold, I'm sitting on a red eye, to your point, Kelly, next to me. What are the odds? The head who's going to see Congress and the director of Fannie Mae, who's having a meeting at 8 o'clock in the morning, is the head of Fannie's repurposed disposition for all of them. I'm like, okay. I mean, didn't even know the guy existed. And then it was like, okay, so, because I asked him, I said, what do you do? And he tells me, I said, I could not contain myself. I was a kid at a candy store. I was laughing so hard. I was coming apart to see if he kind of looked at me like, are you okay? I said, I get to spend 7 hours with you about da-da-da-da-da-da, because we had this big delay on the tarmac. So it wasn't only 5 hours of flying, it was 2 hours on the tarmac. That this is what I do. And I've been bitching that the property's been going up 10%. How dare you steal my houses and you take the property away from me and you give it to a bulk sale when I can make more money and you guys are stealing the money from us to give it to someone else, and you're actually depleting what the purpose of Fannie Mae was set up for the insurance of the money. And so I get too excited, as you can tell. So the point, the joke is, when the property gets taken back, they're supposed to maximize the return to get the money back to not only for the insurer for the property. And so by them taking the property back from the local brokers who were the experts, they were given to a bulk sell to then repurpose it and resell it. So a middleman was coming in. I said, that's not fair. That's not right. And you're minimizing the amount of money. And he came out and he honestly said, I never knew it from that perspective. I said, I can show you time after time, this is what's going on and this is the impact. We were able to change, because of that plane ride, the impact of everything I've been complaining about, and become the speaker to make sure that it was delayed and they minimized, instead of having $100 million purses, that with $1 million, you could go buy those assets and be that nonprofit and do the transitional housing and do that impact. So to your Kelly, I won, because I was able to change the narrative of $7 trillion foreclosure, of the real estate. So it was very interesting. I was very excited.
You can't ever underestimate, just getting the right person in front of you and having a conversation, right? It means a lot. And I got to jump on one more thing, Erica, that, that piece about women competing. So in my opinion, you're not blazing a trail if you're not helping other people come behind you on that trail. All you're doing is walking through a forest. So if you're not bringing other women and other groups of people who maybe haven't been at the table or had an opportunity to even get to the table, or even just some of the people at the table currently, so you can help educate them, like Desiree is doing to her gentleman. I mean, all of that matters, right? Because again, you're not blazing a trail, you're just walking through a forest if you don't bring others with you. So if you want to be a trailblazer, be one. And that requires mentoring the people who are coming behind you. So those two are so connected in my mind.
Perfect. Yes, I would agree. I've seen both. I've seen people who are territorial, and then I've seen the ones that bring people up behind them. But I was like you, I never had a woman boss or a woman mentor. They were all men. And right. To this day, I still have, great male mentors. But, the women look to us, and I'm sure it was similar to what you experienced when you left UPS. It's hard to leave sometimes and go and do something else, because they're like, no, we need people like you, right? Who's going to fill your shoes?
You need to stay. Right, oh, believe me. Right. And you know what? And they can step right in. I go, are you kidding me?
If we've done our job well, hopefully there's people behind us that can improve upon what we've done and what we've taught them. And honestly, in each decade, the opportunities open a little bit more, and they still have to fight, but not like we did or the women before us.
Well, they're fighting different battles. I think they're maybe not fighting entry, but they're fighting, making it broader for even more people, or also for just improvements, like you say. And, Marty, you said something too. So now, so I was one of the oldest people at UPS, because UPS has early retirements for a lot of reasons. But anyways, so now I get out of UPS, and now I'm joining different, philanthropic groups, different volunteer organizations, etc. And in many instances, I'm the youngest woman again. And I'm meeting these older women along the way, like you mentioned, who have had fantastic careers. And I'm telling you, I am learning so much from them. And I think to myself, you know, again, so often we minimize people along the way. Everyone has a story to tell, and everyone has something that you can learn from. You know, it's amazing to me. So now I'm following the trail. I'm trying to follow the trail of people like that too. You know?
Well,
Yeah,
I always think it's interesting quite often when I'm on entering into new nonprofit boards, like the women on the board, well, men too, but you know, some of them are in their older years. And so that's the moment you meet them.
Right.
But if you take the time to peel back the onion and say, what was your journey? What did you do? You know, what was your career? Most of the time you're like, geez, I'm sitting with greatness and I had no idea, you know, like, so, you know, people who show up to do that kind of work, there's always a terrific story. And, you know, one of my favorite stories was this woman, her name was Helen, and she's about like 5'1" or something. She's tiny little, you know, stocky broad. Like she always said, I'm just a broad, you know. And one day we were talking because my daughter's a runner. She was running in college, and she goes, oh yeah, she goes, I got asked to go to the Olympics. And I go, what? And she goes, yeah, well, what happened was, you know, they needed women to compete in the track events. And so they asked me to go, and I said, what did they want you to do? And she goes, I think hurdles, you know, like 5 feet, what? I go, Helen, none of this makes sense. She goes, well, none of the women would do it. So they would take anybody. And she said, I go, well, did you do it? And she goes, no. She goes, but I did go down to the ship and to watch them all go off and send them on their way. And so there's so many layers to the story. Okay, first of all, Olympians that were just picked out of, you know, because we needed women to go show up. The fact that, of course, they would have to go on a ship back in those days. You weren't flying to the Olympics. You know, it was like so many, like I just remember driving home going, oh my God, my brain is blown because this tiny little thing, you know, she just was in this whole different world. And the way she told that story just captivated me, because I just thought, look at her life experience compared to where we are now.
Yeah.
Right.
Strong things come in little packages, they say.
Yeah. But Erica, share a lean and pivot story for you.
She froze.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
I'm like, I just wanted to
Uh-oh.
bring me back to the true story.
Uh-oh.
We were through
Erica, you're in the
stormy,
matrix. She's
Really?
having
Hear me?
really, you're having really bad weather issues. Yeah. So you're back. You're now okay. You're okay. Let's try. If you're not, I'm gonna queue up the TED Talk. Let's try it again.
That's fine. So yeah, it's raining again.
Yeah, you're frozen really bad. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to queue up a TED Talk. So what we did is that, you know, the whole idea is that we started in Chitta. It started about 3 months ago or 4 months ago with principle number 9 and 10, that we started these TED Talks. So where you listen to a TED Talk and we collectively as a group listen to them. And it turned out to be really, really exciting. So the Acknowledged Trailblazer was really tough to find some of them that, you know, that I wanted to find something that would be very different. You know, what I love is, Marty, you're bringing so much, the way you're storytelling and the way you're bringing different terminologies, like there's 4 or 5 things that you've said on our council already that I've written down and I repeat all the time now because it's very different to what I've heard before. So I absolutely love it. So anyway, I found a lady that is in Cape Town in Africa that did a TED Talk that was really spectacular, and I really enjoyed it. So I wanted to go ahead and play it. Eric, are you back? Is the weather okay? I don't see you moving now. She's still frozen. All right, so I'm gonna go. Okay, well, your video's frozen. You're talking though. Okay, there you are. Yeah, I now see. Then you stop again. You're like in and out. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and cue it up if that's okay. So here it is. Oh, before we do that, I've got to hit the share button. Sorry. It's been a few months since I've done this. Okay, share screen. Okay, can you see my screen? Okay, cool. I need to blow it up. Whoops, wrong, not there. Hang on. Give me 1 second. I had it there to start, but for some reason. Okay, we're just gonna start it here. Okay, go for it.
What if Eve was the first person on earth? Bold and brilliant generation, but I pray that it is, and that we become a generation that is more nurturing, a generation that reimagines history, one that invests in its future so that we can create a woman-like history. And most importantly, ensure that we continue to live and create an unforgettable woman era. Thank you.
Uh-oh, I thought that happened. Hang on, sorry. Because for some reason it has, there we go.
Whatever happened was that of a woman. I don't mean to anger the Christians or the evolutionists, but we all know how much history likes to erase women. And in modern day history, we barely know of women who are leaders, who have helped to craft the world that we live in today. And yet, there are many brilliant and wonderful, phenomenal women, the likes of the Queen Mother Nanaya Asantewa of Ghana, Al-Kahina of Algeria, and Giza of Angola, all who valiantly led African resistance against foreign occupation. But very few of us know of those women. Mileva Einstein, does anyone know of that brilliant scientist? One. And he was a physicist married to Albert Einstein. And it has been said that they co-authored several papers, and she contributed significantly to his groundbreaking science. But because of the prevalent bias that existed during that time, any paper that was co-authored by a woman and co-signed would have carried less weight. So history forgot her. And in the present time, just a few weeks ago, we attempted to erase another woman from history, the only second female to win a Nobel Prize award in economics. Esther Duflo's Nobel laureate success was credited to her husband. And she was cited in several publications as the wife of, even though she was the lead in this award-winning paper. Still in the present, we all know and love Mom Gracia Machel, a revolutionary hero, fought for the independence of Mozambique, minister at the age of 30, and yet our history just wants us to remember that she was married to 2 presidents. What a narrative. And back home in Botswana, I am a diamond baby. And that means I was born in a government hospital, I went to a government school, I went to university through a government scholarship, all benefit from diamond dividends. And the landmark agreement that saw Botswana owning its diamonds and reinvesting in its people was the brains of a certain Dr. Chiepe, And she is popularly known as the first woman MP, the first woman cabinet minister, but very few diamond babies actually know that she is responsible. Her leadership and wisdom were the reasons why we are diamond babies. So what if all these women were laying out a foundation for a woman era? An era, a period of memorable women rising. An era of increased women participation in decision-making and innovation, as well as groundbreaking actions and economic development. And if that was the case, then how do we ensure that those women who are presently making history in this woman era do not go forgotten? How do we ensure that this woman era doesn't fizzle out on our watch? And just in case you have doubts that we may be well living within this woman era, I can just remind you that today more than ever, we have more publicly and active women in leadership and decision-making than ever before. And I know it's easy for me and for you to list a string of women who are phenomenal and changing the world that we live in. We have young women, the likes of Jayatma, who's the youth envoy to the UN. We have Ilwad Elman, who's a social and human rights activist in Somalia. Fatma Samura, who's the first Secretary General of FIFA.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and stop it for a second here.
Sasha Work Zwede.
So what did you think of it? Sorry.
You know, what I think oftentimes is, and this is because of my age, you know, I grew up at a time when, when you read the history books, there was never any women in the history I was taught. There were never any women in, you know, areas. So I find it interesting that yet, even though we weren't mentioned in the history books, even though we weren't mentioned as a scientist, you look around, there's many women my age who have done phenomenal things and done, again, blazed creative and huge trails along the way. When you don't have role models, right? And when you're not mentioned, think about if you are starting to be mentioned, just how much more, right, we can do. So I don't get discouraged by the past. I actually kind of get encouraged because I still see so many successful, impactful women all along the way. And then if you start to dig into the history, you see the women and you see what they did. So sometimes I just get excited again about the future. And as we get more and more open to understanding all the impact that everyone around the world, I mean, also my history, you know, very American biased too, obviously, but so there's many names there that she's quoting in Africa. I still know nothing about because, you know, I just don't get that worldview as much as I'd like, but still I'm just encouraged. I don't ever get dismayed because I'm just encouraged by, you know what, we'll just do more and more. And that's including men too. I don't think it's, I don't want it to be threatening to men. I want it to be inclusive of everybody, you know?
Agreed. I just think that, you know, because it's so choppy and poor Erica just got back in and she could barely see it or because of her bandwidth, it's the wind's super bad there. You know, it not to go on, but we're in the woman era, the youngest women, you know, we're always, all of us are someone's first. And it brings me back to Marty's comment about there's this syndrome of the no big deal. And yet we are a big deal to someone else because the fact is we are someone else's first and whatever it is we're doing, you know, it doesn't and that's why bringing someone like her come in, the youngest of the cabinet in all of Africa, all the things, the accolades that she's gone through was just really cool. And she talked about the female claustrophobia you know, about, that's what she calls it, to where you get another woman at the board and they only support other women. You know, we talked about to where, you know, like Marty talked about, the 70-plus-year-old was like threatened with Marty coming into the space, like, you know, I don't want to include you because, you know, you're going to take away my business and this is my passion. It was very, very interesting. Then she came and then she closed it out with a she specialist. We need more she specialists to come into the thing versus then, you know, calling it D&I and all the different things. So I really like the terminology she came about. It's only a 13-minute video, but obviously we can't play the whole thing, but it really spoke to me. And the more I listened to it, the more I was like, okay, this is really, really cool. And what she brought to it. So I thought it was great. So Erica, you back to where we in?
I'm sorry, you guys, the weather's funky. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can hear you very well.
So let me feed on that Africa thread. So I'm involved in something called Women, Peace and Security. It's a United Nations security resolution. And it was started by women in Africa. So the women of Africa got very, very tired of their daughters being sold for child brides or being raped. They were tired of their sons being taken for recruitment tools for child soldiers. And so after many years, they did what we would know as a sit-in. And so they sat at the government building month after month, you know, wearing white, just peaceful protesting. And all the men are like, get out of here, you know, and they would not leave. And so the word spread, and it became 3 countries in Africa then coming together to try to oust a dictatorship that was, you know, decades of war. And what was beautiful about it, you know, back to Kelly's point, if I think about, you know, women and running households, you know, we're all animals, right? And women collaborate. You know, the men would be out hunting and they would be focusing, and we would have to get along with different tribes. And there was the kids and there was all of the rest of it. So anyway, these women from different religions, different industries, different backgrounds, they all came together and they eventually did oust the dictator, and then a woman president had taken over. And since then, there's been many women leaders, you know, partly because a lot of men were killed in genocide, but it brought the world to focus on the power of women and collaboration and how effective they can be in peacekeeping and peace treaties. And you know, then that stemmed into government, which stemmed into industry and entrepreneurship. And it was just this whole cascading effect that really happened in the late 90s. And that's when the UN said, hey, 2000, we're coming up with UNSCAR 1325, recognizing that women and children are disproportionately affected by conflict and crisis. And they are a key in basically preventing that and making things resolve quicker. So anyway, that sort of made me think of the power of women coming together that can change not only their communities, but the world.
You're muted, Desiree.
How powerful that is, Erica. I never knew that story and have that come together, because, you know, this is what this lady goes into is that, you know, the president of Ethiopia is a woman, and yet it's the movement, we can't be satisfied. And that's just what she talks about is that we all need to, but yeah, we can name more women. Yes, we're in the, you know, and not saying take it off the gas pedal. We just, you know, she just has this way of framing things that just a beautiful thing. So yeah, that's, do we know the lady? Do we know the people who were credited, or the women that were credited and in Africa who actually formed that all, or is it just was collectively for the WPS?
Yeah, there was definitely like 5 that spearheaded it. I'll send you guys a link. There's a movie out about it. It's really, really powerful how this all came to be and how it basically changed and shaped the governments of Africa and around the world. So I'll send that to you.
I'd love to publish. Yeah, very cool. So Marty, what did you think of it?
Well, it reminded me a few years back, I attended the Women Moving Millions conference in New York, and it's all women who've committed to give away $1 million to better issues for women and girls. And I left, at the conference, I came in with this mindset of, you know, I think we've done pretty good. Like, you know, I navigated, you know, a male dominated sales industry, navigated some of the crap that goes along with that, but, figured my way and knew how to hold my own in my space. And so kind of had that, I only know my experience, which I know I had to fight for things, but it, on the whole, I was able to do what I wanted to do. And went to the conference, and it was a series of lectures and eye-opening stories about women around the world and what they're facing. And I came home and was completely rattled, because I realized that I had this white privileged American experience. And when you open up your mind to what women are facing around the world, is when it can bring you to your knees, because just the stories that were coming out of it, and the peril that a lot of these women are in every single day, just rattled me to my bones. And so I think we're in our world here, but when you think about, Kelly, I love that you're all about bringing women with you. It's having that global focus as well, so that we're helping our sisters in, other countries that, we've had the privilege of being ahead on the curve. Like, I always think everything's on a bell curve. Like, we're doing better. We still need to do better, but we're probably over here. There's women in countries that are way back here that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. So it kind of reminded me of how bone rattling that experience was for me. It was kind of like I came home with a hangover. Like I couldn't wrap my head around it. It's almost like, in some ways, you're sorry you saw it, because you realize how bad it is. It was easier to stay in my little white privileged, things are pretty darn good over here. And so it just really rattled me. And I think that's, it's something that we need to make sure everybody's wired differently to do their own impact in their own way. And I'm so grateful that there are women who are focused on the global efforts to make sure that they're being taken care of.
Yeah, I think it can sometimes feel overwhelming. And so I often look at it as, move your one stone, right? If you can blaze a trail for a couple more stones to roll down, the mountain will move, right? And because the mountain can seem so big, to your point, Marty, I agree 100%. And I think we just need to focus. Okay, let's get this one rock rolling, and maybe that will help move the whole mountain, because there's a lot of work to be done. No.
And I would say, Kelly, that it can be simple, having traveled around the world, and women find things in common. We'll talk about our boyfriends, our husbands, our families. We kind of gossip about all the things that we all have in common, and it establishes a little bit of trust and credibility, and then you can open dialogue, and then perhaps they might open up to you and be vulnerable. But as big as the world is, we all have so much in common, and we all want the same things for our families. We want good education, we want good health care, we want food, we want opportunity to potentially have a little cart that can sell agriculture, to make money for the family. There's just, it's not super complicated when you think about it, and those women have to bring up women behind them. It looks different, but it's not so different.
Right. I agree 100%. And I tend to find, and I mean, this is being somewhat general, but I tend to find that women always do kind of start out collaboratively. I think that's a great point, Erica, because I think we start there and we work through that, and we sometimes may become competitive. I don't dispute that, but I really do think that's a key point. And I think men are different. Men start out competitively. They may become collaborative, but they start out competitively. I think women are a little different in that way. I don't know, just my opinion.
As mothers, I think that's probably one of the reasons, not to be competitive with your child, right? Or to be competitive to go with it. So the mindset is to be, nurturing to everyone. You have to, okay, got to have the food, got to cook, got to clean, got to take care of the kids, so you're trying to work together to make everyone's personalities and timings doing it. So you're brought in to be, focus on being in the, the provider of happiness. And so the men are out there, their tribal thought of, okay, I've got to make the money. I got to bring it in at all costs. It's for me and my family versus, and, you are the family, I think it makes two of that. So very interesting. And so full circle, in 2017, I was asked to speak at the very first African United Nations Summit at the UN in New York. And the lady who was supposed to be doing it from, she was one of the ladies who runs all the different programs, part of our council, and or the delegate program, which is right aside, the next from the NDILC. And she's like, no, Desiree, you need to do it. And I'm like, I'm not from Africa. No, you need to be here from the United States to represent, to get on this. So I had the top presidents and first ladies of all 17 of 17 different African, we had Panama, we had Ethiopia, and I could go through the whole list. But the thing that was so powerful was, at the end of the day, every single woman that was on the panels had very similar stories, and it didn't matter. But the woman next to me, I'll never forget her. She was on a board. Everyone came in beautiful costumes too. I mean, everyone wore their everyday outfits that were like dress up here. I mean, like I was going to a formal ball, and here these women were just beautifully dressed. And I was like, this is dressed up like, no, this is how we dress every day in our country. And I'm like, okay, which is very cool. But anyway, the woman was so vocal with her hands. She could not stop moving it, that I literally was ducking everywhere we were on the conversation as we were speaking, because we were sitting at this table. And it was so interesting because it livened up the conversation, because I was making motions and trying not to say anything, because this woman was on a roll. And she looked, and we crossed eyes, and here we are, didn't know each other, from totally different countries. And I loved everyone's accent there. Oh my gosh. And the coolest thing was, a man stood up at the end and says, how do we get this information out of this room? How do we share this with the world? Because people need to hear it and see it, because all the security detail was trying to rip them out and get them out of there, because we were 6 hours overdue. I mean, literally it went on that long. And I'll never forget that experience, because here I was talking about the issues that we have here in the United States, comparatively what they're talking about these different countries. And I'm till this day, know them and talk to them and can sit here and say what that experience was. And I'll share that link to everyone too. It's just really powerful for me.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, and I kind of want to close it up and get your comments with just something, again, figuratively looking at, a forest in front of you and how to get through that. A true story, there I was, we were plowing through all of this southern brush and vines, and, as a team of like 6, and just like in pain. And all of a sudden the guy in front of me just disappears. Now, granted, we hadn't had sleep for like 3 days, and I'm like, am I hallucinating? What is going on here? The guy just is gone. And it turns out, it was so thick that you couldn't see what was underneath you. And so we were walking on all of this stuff, and he fell through the vines into an old chimney. It was the foundation of a house that you would never know existed. So we were like, oh my gosh. And he had the radio. So we were like, where are you? And he was way down there. And we're like, oh my gosh, how are we going to get this guy out? And so we knew we were on our own. And so we just helped him to shimmy up, get his gear, rope it up. And I tell that story because it isn't a linear path. We all know that we are going to fall, and we're going to fall hard, and we are going to be lost. And where do you dig, and why do you dig to get out of that hole, or that different path to keep driving forward, even though you're all, you're in pain. And it may not be easy. And I really believe that comes from, you have to be passionate. You have to have something that is driving you forward, not money, but something deeper. You're wanting to make a change, you're wanting to make a difference. Because if it was easy, everybody would have blazed that trail. So why are you trying to get to that other side, and what keeps you going through those falls? So on that note, I'm going to leave it to you ladies for any bits of advice on trailblazing for others. So Kelly, floor is yours.
Oh my gosh. Trailblazing for others. Again, I think I've said some of these points, but don't give up. Don't give up, even when it seems like you fell down the chimney, right? You fell down the chimney, but don't give up. There's find a way out and continue to work on, finding that way out and then sharing that with others. I think what Desiree said, I think the ability to then communicate and share that so others don't have to fall down that same chimney. They might fall down a different chimney, but they're not going to fall down the chimneys I fell down if I can help it. So that would be my best advice. I don't know, Marty, your thoughts?
I think in my travels, the things that have helped me the most are, number one, when something intrigues you and you see there's something there that's making you pause and look, like to put a wedge in it, to lean in a little bit and do something to activate it in some way, so that you're pushing into it a little bit, so that you keep moving forward. And, it might be, emailing an author of an article that you read, or, asking to go to coffee with someone, or, those kind of brave things that just keep the momentum going forward. And, I think it's facing those, when you get that chatter in your head and you're like, I don't know, they're not going to think I'm important enough to talk to, or why would they want to spend time on me, or all those self-doubting things that, you just have to be brave and figure what's the worst case scenario that could happen. And, just sharing that with women to shore them up. And I think, one thing that Desiree and I talk a lot about is that, people around you, gathering really smart women or people around you that see you for what you are and remind you of that, so that, that you're, because quite often you don't even realize, I always say, what your no big deal skill is, that thing you do effortlessly, because you do it so effortlessly, you don't think it's important but that's the thing you should be doing. And so I think it's important that we surround each other and just keep shining a light on what we see in others to embolden them to keep going.
I love it. So I'm going to steal it and say that all of us are someone else's first, from that lady. Don't ask me to even pronounce her name. It's whoa. She, it's to the point that we all have to and amplify the no big deal that Marty, you told me about. We're all here to be our best. And if we're our best, then someone else is going to look at us and go, oh, wow. So don't doubt ourselves, but keep going. And that drive to what Erica, intensity, and sometimes we just keep going and think we need to be better and better and better. And sometimes we need to take that pause to say that it's okay to stop and reflect. But at the same time, remember, your vulnerabilities also could be someone else's strength to go through it. So just keep that in mind to go with it. So I want to put it out there. So you want to close out, Erica, and I'll talk about next week real quick. Next month real quick. So the principles.
No, I appreciate your time, ladies. I know you all have things going on, and weather the storm, literally. Desiree, to you.
Yeah, I know, seriously. So thank you very much for kicking off the 2023, our 12 women leadership principles. We have moved them over to Tuesday versus Thursday, because it's going to help everyone, especially Kelly and some others, to be on the call. We have several that are out today for doctor's appointments. So kicking off the new year, right? Obviously, health is first. So it is acknowledge Trailblazers, know and learn from the women who came before you. We are all standing at the shoulders of giants. Next month is going to be keep achieving. Effective leaders always keep learning, which is what Kelly brought up today. So that was excellent, and how she's always learning on these different boards. There's always something to learn and improve upon. And with the weather, everyone, please be safe and stay healthy. And please make sure that you always share the smile and say thank you to everyone, because I think with the world we're living in right now, we all have to be very thankful that every day we can smile is a day worth living, right? So thank you all from the bottom of my heart. And we'll see you all later. And I'm off to Chicago, and let's make this happen, do action. All right. Thank you, Erica, for hosting, and we'll see you all later.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye.